2 pair straight. 5 of a kind. What? Huh? Huh?
Roguelikes, and the more specific yet slightly distinct roguelite, if you are currently not aware, is a genre of game that is defined by a style of role-playing traditionally characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid movement, and permanent death of the player character. You'll note that does say traditionally. Whereas a roguelike is a never-ending series of procedural generation wholly determined by player skill and player knowledge throughout repeated runs, a roguelite is more or less defined by a progression system. It basically follows the same exact game design principle as a roguelike, but in a roguelite, you unlock new abilities for later runs that can more easily guarantee your success at some point in the future. What makes the genre so fascinating to me is that it is not only one of the loosest defined genres in all of gaming, as you can pretty much convert any game, genre, or general idea into a roguelike. There are dungeon crawler roguelikes, sea diving roguelikes, turn-based combat roguelikes, third-person shooter roguelikes, deck building roguelikes, cooking roguelikes. Hell, I'm sure somewhere out there there's a roguelike where you can make paintings by shooting at other paintings or something like that. I don't know. Joking aside though, roguelikes are, at least in my opinion, one of the most game for gamers genres that there is. It's the ultimate accidentally stay awake until 3 a.m. kind of genre. With its reliance on player skill, it forces you to learn its mechanics in and out, make tough, meaningful decisions or rapid-fire decisions that can put you on the edge of death at practically any given second during each and every run of the game. And their game being built around playing its systems over and over again means that its systems are unbelievably refined. A roguelike is generally a mechanics-first game, and it is proud of that notion. However, due to that, I think that the genre has in itself become some form of gatekeep. Its themes are usually built around high fantasy, sci-fi, or something usually visually bizarre. Its inherent systems that are intended for you to die over and over again not only incentivizes learning the game inside and out, but it is also probably very disheartening for new players to the genre due to that nature. But most of all, its games are generally often rather complex. A lot of roguelikes that I've played often have several different variant builds that you can strive for in each run, but the unlocks that you get during each of those runs are often sort of nebulous, or at least can make your eyes glaze over while reading them. Usually, to me at least, when I'm reading the upgrades that I'm choosing in a game like Vampire Survivors or a game like 20 Minutes Till Dawn, I see a lot of terms and a lot of numbers with percentages and decimal points, and I sort of get a sense as to how this will help or hurt the build that I have going so far already in the game, but at a certain point, I just sort of get lost in the sauce. That isn't always the case though, as in a game like Gunfire Reborn, it aligns more with the vibe of just pick up good stuff. You can tune your build for sure, but at least from what I've played, if a power-up looks or sounds good, just fucking take it. In a game like Risk of Rain 2, it's basically a 99% case of, that's mine, I'll take it, yes please! All that being said, I think that this is now where Balatro comes into play, because up until the release of Balatro, I would have recommended any of those games that I mentioned earlier, like Risk of Rain 2, or Gunfire Reborn, or even my first real roguelite game, Immortal Redneck, as an entry point into the genre. If shooters weren't your thing, then I would probably suggest Slay the Spire. If all else failed, I would recommend Vampire Survivors. But now, pretty much, no matter who you are, what your gaming biases might be, I will recommend Balatro as the entry point for roguelikes. It's simply perfect. Glad you asked. Balatro is a game where you fight against poker blinds that require a certain amount of points to be defeated. How do you get points? Well, you just play poker hands. 2 pair, full houses, straights, gays, and flushes. And each hand has a given chip value and a set multiplier. You can play a set amount of hands and perform a certain amount of discards depending on which deck that you start the game with. The goal of the game is, like I said previously, to beat these poker blinds that exponentially get bigger with each successful victory. Each blind is part of an ante in which there are 3 blinds per ante that you have to beat, and the third blind in each ante is the boss that gives a random negative effect on the game, such as a lower hand size, a certain suit being debuffed, an unusually large blind to beat, and each hand that you play lowering in value. Throughout your runs, after each successful blind, you get cash depending on how many hands it took you to beat the blind, and then you are greeted by a shop. The shop comes up every time you beat a blind and offers a variety of things that you can buy. There are booster packs that give you celestial cards, which can be used to upgrade the power of specific poker hands, increasing their base chip value as well as their multiplier. There are tarot cards that are used for deck and individual card manipulation, such as deleting cards from your deck, turning cards into other cards, increasing the rank of 2 individual cards, or just making some cards give an additional bonus. There are standard card packs that give exactly what they sound like, but also have a chance of giving you an enhanced card right out of the gate. There are spectral cards that give game-breaking abilities to your deck, such as changing a suit of cards into one suit, such as changing an entire assortment of cards into hearts, or giving some cards a stamp which provides an additional benefit when played or kept in your hand. There are vouchers that are used to change the rules of the game slightly, such as increasing your maximum hands per blind, increasing the amount of discards per blind, as well as just making everything cheaper in the shop. But the real meat and potatoes of Balatro is that final option in the store, which are the jokers. Jokers are cards that you don't add to your deck, but are instead ones that go into the little window at the top of your screen. You can only carry 5 of them, but they manipulate the game, the point system, as well as lean the player towards certain directions of playing the game and building their deck. You'll find jokers that give bonuses on playing 10s and 4s, so you'll want to fill your deck to the brim with those cards. You'll find jokers that give chip and multiplier bonuses towards odd or even cards. You'll find jokers that give certain cards the potential to give you money, jokers that upgrade hands that you discard, jokers that can re-trigger certain cards, jokers that duplicate certain cards. There are a lot of jokers in the game, 150 to be exact. And on top of the huge variety that these jokers give to the game, they also have the chance to being enhanced themselves, giving a chip bonus, a multiplier bonus, or allowing you to carry more jokers, on top of whatever they did in the first place. I know that might sound overwhelming to hear as a rules dump, and there are some nuances to these mechanics that I haven't really gone over, but I can't really emphasize enough that everything really becomes crystal clear once you actually begin to play with the game. It's literally just poker with some very varying variables, if I may. You are at the whim of what jokers and what packs show up in stores, but with the reroll option in the store, you can always dig for more powerful synergies. The only part of this game that ever feels mean-spirited is the actual part of playing poker. Trying to dig for a third copy of a king so you can just play that full house that you've upgraded the most out of any other hand this run, or just begging the RNG to give you that first of 4 threes that you know are still in the deck so you can complete that straight that your entire run has been built up around until now. But Balatro being a poker game, you sort of inherently forgive the game for being mean to you because poker by its own nature is gambling. All of these risks that you take while playing your runs of Balatro seamlessly tie in with the baseline theme that Balatro is leaning onto. No matter your familiarity with poker, whether you know the game well or this is your first interaction with the game at all, poker as a game is very easy to read. None of its central systems are complex and anyone can really learn the game in basically about a minute. So that as a starting point to anyone wanting to give Balatro a go, already have one of the easiest learning curves in all of roguelikes to conquer. So Those are the basics, the gists, the old meat and potatoes of Balatro. But what about the game makes it not only a great entry point into the genre of roguelikes, but an essential title in the genre and one that will stand among the best for years to come? At the beginning of this video, when I was naming different roguelikes and their respective variants of readability in their systems, I was trying to convey the gradient that is present in the genre. Now, with all of the systems in place in Balatro, you may think that the game leans towards the more difficult side of that scale, but in reality, you do quickly realize that it is the opposite. Balatro, like many good roguelikes that came before it, is filled with not only a plentiful amount of decisions, but nearly every single one of those is a meaningful one. Balatro does a lot to flesh out something so simple and basic, and turn it into something hefty, chunky, voluptuous, and yet still something that you can sift through with relative ease as if you were shuffling a deck of cards. Now, this isn't to say that other roguelikes don't have plenty of meaningful decisions. Most of them, if not all of them, do. But what I think Balatro does exceedingly well in this regard is the elegance of those choices and those decisions. Despite the 6 different options that you have in the shop every turn, and despite those 6 options essentially being their own branching pathways that build off of each other, every single decision in the game is clear and concise. Where I think a lesser roguelike that followed in a similar design vein of Balatro would have tried to make a lot of the back end complicated and put game-changing effects that would read something like, all odd cards increase the chip value of the played hand by 5%, or something like a Joker reading, if the third card in your hand is a heart, all other cards give an additional 10% chip value. Or something even as weird as, Jokers give an additional 20% to your multiplier. If you play a flush this turn, it is 30% instead. Or something as simple as just like banana. All hail the banana. All hail the banana. All hail the banana. All hail the banana. And sure, they essentially would be doing a lot of the same things that the Jokers and upgrades do in the game normally, but for the average Joe, or at least for me, I would never, in a million years, understand what the value at the end of any of those abilities that I just read to you would be in basically any given situation. The game Tainted Grail is inherently a Slay the Spire variant, and I do think that everything it's doing is a very solid copy, and potentially an improvement on what Slay the Spire does. But you know what really turns me off? All of those percentages. There's no concrete baseline readability in a game like Tainted Grail. At some point, you just see a big number being displayed into your eyeballs and you think to yourself, that's bigger than what I normally have, let's just hope it works. And in a game like Balatro, where literally all you have to do is beat a very clearly indicated number, that just wouldn't work in a turn-by-turn scenario where you only need a certain amount of known points in order to win. Instead, what Balatro does is stick to easy readability and precise wording. Upgrade the ranks of 2 cards by 1. Odd ranked cards give plus 30 to your overall chip value. Allows straights to be made with gaps of 1 rank. Or even a more complicated rule wording like +1 multiplier per consecutive hand played without scoring a face card is clear, concise, and immediately understandable. Even the Jokers that give strange variables like misprint, you understand in about 1 second that the multiplier that it gives isn't constant and can vary from any assortment of bonuses ranging from literally 0 to about 20. Most of the time, you can very clearly, easily infer what would get you the most points through the Jokers in your inventory and the cards in your hand. Balatro falls perfectly in line with a straightforward roguelike that can be matched alongside what I consider the greats in the genre, like Slay the Spire, Dicey Dungeon, Slice and Dice, and hell, even Inscription with its simplicity. I often compare roguelikes to board gaming, with their inherent systems following a very similar feeling of artificial progression. But the difference when it comes to roguelikes is that it's just me. Board gaming can get away with a sense of getting lost in the sauce due to the nature of board gaming being very social. Sitting with friends at a table, talking between turns, and occasionally losing focus of the game altogether. One of my favorite channels, Shut Up and Sit Down, has termed the feeling of getting lost in the mechanics and the haze of social interaction the fuzziness. And that same fuzziness exists in some of those more complicated roguelikes that I mentioned. When I'm with friends, I don't usually mind in board gaming whether or not I win or lose, because playing the board game is really only about half the experience. In a roguelike, I don't want to get lost in the sauce. I don't need a lot of fuzziness. I already have a beard and I don't need any more hair in my mouth. I'm trying to beat the game and prove that I am competent at the mechanics. Balatro does have some fuzziness. I think it's inescapable. But Balatro's fuzziness comes in the form of the deck itself and the inherent randomness of being a card game. You are at the whim of RNG to that extent, but the game does what it can to help mitigate that with its discarding system. It allows you to dig as much as you can for the best possible hand to play based on your jokers, or which hand types that you've leveled up the most, and the arcana cards that you've gathered up until now, and they all work in tandem to ensure a stronger chance that your deck will play itself to the best it can. Balatro strikes a very different feeling of satisfaction compared to many other games in the genre. Balatro is a game that rewards careful planning and thoughtful executions of its systems on your turn. That aspect for roguelikes especially is not anything new. But where Balatro is different in my opinion is that in those other games, it feels like you're fine-tuning a machine that you've crafted over the course of many turns. But it's pretty rare that a game can make you feel like you've successfully built a Rube Goldberg machine, and every turn is just you pulling back the lever of a slot machine and letting go and watching the game take control, hoping that the gears that you've put into place over the course of your many turns all work out in the way that you need them to in order to get you over that point threshold. Watching those numbers go up alongside those bings and tings of an old poker machine or a slot machine only help add to this very intentional, one-dimensional world of off-kilter gambling, duplicity, and debauchery that Balatro sets for you. In a game like Slay the Spire, your deck is your engine, your machine, and you only see glimpses of it every turn. The amount of cards in your hand is what you have to work with each turn, but you have to play them in the right order to get that engine to sing in the way that you've built it to. But in Balatro, while you don't obviously have access to your entire deck every turn, that's where part of the fuzziness comes into play, what you do get out of every turn is the engine you've built yourself. Your jokers give every benefit they can in the order that you've arranged them in. If something isn't working out right, it's either your fault for not having toned your deck in the proper manner, or the fact that your jokers don't work well together. The feeling you get before you hit play hand when you're only one hand away from losing the run entirely and you barely scrape by with a victory is probably akin to the feeling of scientists turning on the particle accelerator for the first time and breathing that sigh of relief when they realize that they were indeed not going to create a black hole and swallow the entire planet. Balatro strikes a perfect balance of risk-reward, strategy, and randomness. It is all that roguelikes can be, while at the same time being wholly unique of its own values. It's addicting and occasionally frustrating, but no matter how many times you lose, you will keep coming back to it. Balatro is the perfect introduction to roguelikes as a genre because it's simply perfect.
Tomato is a fruit, but it also a vegetable.
Big half open.
Okay.
Okay. You're gonna do it one more time, dog.
I can't break. I can't break.
Huh? Huh?
You gotta do it one more time, dude.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.